Today on the Win Daily Show, I have Nick Sulsky, president of Monkey Knife Fight, partner of Win Daily. Nick, how you doing today, man?
I'm good, Michael. Well done with my last name. You already
Thank
you already
you.
scored a point in my book, man.
It only took 3 or 4 times, but we got there, man. We got there. Appreciate your time today. So, yeah, man, excited to talk a little bit about Monkey Knife Fight, what you guys do, how you guys have partnered up with us over here at the Win Daily and the team. But the first question I have for everybody is, what does it mean to you to win daily?
It's an interesting question to ask me. I'll be completely candid. I'm a pretty open book about things. When I look at life, everything for me is also shaded on the fact that I've been battling non-Hodgkin's lymphoma for about 10 years. So the reality is non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, for those of you that aren't aware, is cancer. It's a very when it comes to the spectrum of that, unfortunate disease, it's kind of the best, right? Effectively, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is more akin to a chronic disease. It's something that will never be cured. But that being said, it's also not necessarily as aggressive as some of the other forms of cancer. So for me, winning daily is keeping my head on straight, right? It's getting through every moment of every day, making sure my health stays as optimal as possible. I have a very strict diet regime. I have a very strict exercise regime. And psychologically, what I've learned is, happiness and positivity is as important as kind of conventional Western medicine, in my opinion, to maintaining kind of an even keel from a health perspective. So of course, every day, work is very busy and you want to be successful. You want to, move the ball down the field, to use a sports vernacular, with Monkey Knife Fight and with other, with other things in my life. But, for me personally, it's waking up and having, a level of calm and positivity throughout my day, because, ultimately, being the president of a growing company, I spend a lot of my day talking to people like yourself and to my team and to potential business partners. And so the reality is that communication and that tone that I deal with and that I have to kind of put forth is how I survive. I'm not a developer. I don't code. I talk. So the reality is, maintaining a level of comfort and positivity in my kind of moment to moment life is quite frankly the only way that I can win daily, to bring it back to your question.
Mm-hmm. Well, man, I mean, thank you again for being open and, as you said, candid, honest, intimate with us. I really do appreciate it. It's always good to kind of hear, what everyone's going through, because we never really know who is going through what at what time. So I appreciate you being open with us there. And I totally agree. Positivity is the best way to live. I mean, negativity doesn't do anything except make things worse.
Well, and speaking to that, yes, and bullshit. Like the reason why I live my life, I put all my cards on the table, with everyone, with my wife, with my daughter, with the people that work on my team, and with all partners. There's no need to waste time with bullshit. So my belief is you throw it all out there. I mean, geez, you and Jason, your partner in Win Daily, as we've been working together, it's always been cards on the table. Unfortunately, during this pandemic, it's been a hard time for everyone in the sports space. I've had many conversations with partners where it's like, listen, things are tough. We're all in this together. But the reality is, when revenue drives up because there's no real sports on the field, it's an impact to us and our bottom line. It's an impact to you because you have less content to engage your partners with. But ultimately, when cash flows are leaner, everyone needs to be proactive and pragmatic about what their expectations are. We all want to keep the lights on, but we all need to understand that maybe we're not going to be going out there and affording, we're not going to go out for that $400 steak dinner this week. It sounds like an odd sacrifice, but the reality is, one, we want to keep all of our employees employed. We want to keep all of our users engaged, and we want to keep all of our partners happy, but we're all in this together, right?
100%, man. And it's the weirdest time in human history, or at least my human history. I don't think we've ever done this really ever before, considering
Yeah,
how
I don't know. I don't know if this is much weirder than like the bubonic plague or things like that. Human history has definitely dealt with things a little bit more crazier than COVID. COVID's horrible, but ultimately,
but no
I think,
sports.
well, no sports, but I think social media and the way that we consume news excuse me, has definitely heightened all of our perceptions on how dramatic COVID is. COVID is it's horribly bad. I'm not trying to downplay that, but I do think that, I think we have to take the impact on human civilization with a bit of a grain of salt. Yes, no sports sucks, but hey, there wasn't televised sports 60, 70 years ago, whatever it is, right? So, I
Yep.
mean,
I mean,
hey,
the NBA finals used to be on tape delay in the 80s. So, I mean,
dude,
we're not too far away from
dude,
that.
I
So
remember that. I'm old.
I'm not that old, so I don't remember it. I just kind of I have that one in the bank whenever I'm talking to people that are a little older than me. But it's just crazy when you think about it. And yes, of course, I know human history is crazy, but let's be honest, history is really just your lifetime, right? That's the only part of it I care about. It's because that's the part I've been alive for. I'm really egotistical, but I feel like everybody has that from time to time. So I guess again, thank you again for really being open and honest with us and candid. And as you said, no bullshit. Like we're not here to BS. We're here.
Yep,
Everyone's in this together. We're all trying to get through this, and we will eventually get through this. Sports will be back. We don't know when, but we will. We do know we're going to be back, and we're excited for it. And until then, we press on. So I do want to hear more about your story, though. So
sure.
Monkey and Knife Fight's a really interesting company. We do a lot of prop plays, but I'm curious, how did you get into the fantasy sports, prop play, sports gambling side of the market? Were you like 18, 19, just started, had some cash to throw around? How exactly did that story start?
No, man, I've been involved in the fantasy industry for almost, gosh, how old am I now? For almost 20 years. It's funny. I live up in Canada. I live in Toronto. I was making TV shows and movies up here. Um, and I was doing a sports talk show up in Canada on TSN, which is effectively the Canadian ESPN. And there was a talk show called Off the Record. And this was like a panel talk show. And years and years ago, I started doing that sports talk show because I was on television and whatever. And I used to play rugby at a very high level. So, and I was also a sports freak. This was kind of mid 2000s, and I started getting pretty into fantasy football and fantasy sports. Um, as luck would have it, the producer of that show was also a big fantasy sports fan. And this is before kind of fantasy sports. This is before daily fantasy sports, before everything kind of exploded. But it was starting to get more and more popular. And so the producer of that show, Off the Record, and I decided to pitch TSN a fantasy sports show. So they agreed. It became the first broadband fantasy sports show I believe there ever was. It was called the Fantasy Hockey Report. Of course, being in Canada, we started with hockey. And so we started doing the Fantasy Hockey Report. Myself and my former partner, Scott Cullen, who now currently writes for The Athletic. So Scott and I started doing the Fantasy Hockey Report. And then that started, and it was only, it was like a, 10-minute show online once a week on tsn.ca. It was super fun. But that started, that started me thinking about how fantasy sports and conventional media would play with one another. I was always, and I still am a big believer that fantasy sports is a complement to sports broadcast. And that got me thinking about kind of the companion experiences and the second screen and third screen now. And I then founded a startup called InGamer, which was a free-to-play fantasy product. And this was like 2009, 2010. It was a free-to-play fantasy sports product that you can play while you're watching sports on TV. So you would pick 5 players, then you could change your players during the game that you were watching, and you'd score points in real time and all this sort of thing. Built that startup, got it funded, licensed it to a bunch of media companies. It was attached to Hockey Night in Canada, which is the longest sports broadcasted show in the world, ever. The reality with that was it was a free-to-play game, and this was just before FanDuel and DraftKings FanDuel started, really. FanDuel being, I believe, the first of the big daily fantasy sports companies, because DraftKings only got big when they bought Draft Street, if you remember correctly.
Reading that book now. It's actually fantastic. $1 billion
Oh,
fantasy. It's
yeah, no,
awesome.
I haven't read it. Oh, it's good. Okay,
Great
I'll
book.
take that suggestion. That's great. So, the reality that I lived through was, we built a real-time fantasy sports companion experience, but it was a free-to-play product relying on a license fee model with media companies. Coming from the media world, it made all the sense in the world. Well, broadcast value is X. If you can add digital value on top of it, well, now it's X plus, Y. The challenge is defining that why. So we as a startup was requiring a license fee from broadcasters. Broadcasters at the same time would need to make money off of that. And so they would need to go and sell that digital experience to a sponsor. Logically, it made all the sense in the world. It was a sexy story, second screen experience, fantasy sports, and all of that. But from a sponsor's perspective, all they give a shit about are eyeballs. And so then it becomes a chicken and the egg syndrome where sponsors like, yes, we love the idea. What are the eyeballs? The broadcaster's like, well, there's no eyeballs because we're just building that. And the sponsor's like, okay, well, we'll give you, Y divided by 4 until you build the eyeballs up. But being a startup, we need money to keep the lights on. So, it became an unfortunate cycle where your expectations are the value is Y, but you can actually only sell it for a fraction of or broadcasters were only able to sell it for a fraction of the price until the eyeballs got there. So unless you were a startup that could literally exist for 2 years, making a very nominal amount from a media company, you're screwed. Mm-hmm. So the free-to-play licensing model, and I've said this to many other startup founders have come to me asking for advice, and I've spoken on lots of panels, and that's the unfortunate reality. If you're going to do a free-to-play game, unless you have a runway of a couple years, you're fucked. Don't. Oh, sorry. Am I allowed swearing on this?
We'll live.
Sorry. I'm a
You're
potty
good.
mouth.
Honesty again. I like it. I appreciate it.
I'll do my best. I'll do my best. So the reality is the free-to-play license model, as much logically as it makes sense, because yes, there is value added to broadcast and digital value that any sports broadcaster has. It takes a long time to achieve the critical mass to be able to sell that to a sponsor to be able to then recoup the type of money you need to make a lot of money. So unfortunately, that startup didn't succeed the way that I wanted it to. But then I got recruited into a regulated gaming company that was a UK-based regulated gaming company that was trying to figure out how to get a piece of the emerging daily fantasy sports market. This was in the early 2010s, early 20-teens. Excuse me. So I joined this company and tried to help them figure out how to take their regulated licensed gaming model. They were in the horse racing space and get into the daily fantasy sports space. So figured out that, at this time, FanDuel and DraftKings was exploding, but the regulated gaming operators, effectively the casinos, they were dying to get into daily fantasy sports, but they couldn't touch it because they couldn't jeopardize their gaming licenses to get into daily fantasy sports because, quite frankly, it was a gray area, and it still is. Like daily fantasy sports is not legal across the U.S. So, the casino operators are trying to figure out, let's face it, back in the 20-teens, people were still confident that at some point PASPA would be repealed. Excuse me, that would allow for sports gambling to become legalized. I mean, obviously it's happened, and we're starting to see that momentum in that evolution. But back in the 20-teens, it still was a hope, right? And the casino operators weren't willing to jeopardize their gaming licenses to make a bet, no pun intended, into the daily fantasy sports space. And so what we decided to do was to try and acquire a daily fantasy sports operator and then pivot that business model into being a B2B marketing provider, which would allow regulated casinos to then partner with us, but then we would effectively be the operator of a daily fantasy sports white label liquidity, shared liquidity network. So it would protect them. It would protect these regulated casinos from jeopardizing the gaming licenses because they would effectively have a relationship with a third party, us being the operator, and they would effectively just be a marketing skin. So we've put together this strategy, got a lot of buy-in from some of the top casinos in the US. And then I was a part of a group that went and acquired Draft Day, which at the time was one of the bigger daily fantasy sports companies. So we acquired Draft Day. I became the president of Draft Day, and then we worked toward pivoting their business. So the deal to acquire Draft Day closed in September of 2015. And if you remember, and if all of your listeners remember what happened in October of 2015,
Keep going.
think about what happened in the daily fantasy sports space around October of 2015.
Is that when they were trying to merge?
This is the Ethan Haskell moment. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes. This gentleman he was working at one of them, and
He was the
yes.
employee of FanDuel who won a DraftKings contest, or an employee of DraftKings.
Yeah.
And at that moment, the New York Attorney General deemed daily fantasy sports illegal sports gambling. So if you can appreciate the position that we were in as a company, we acquired Draft Day in September of 2015 with a bunch of casinos ready to rock with this B2B strategy. And then Ethan Haskell's scandal breaks in October. In November, the New York Attorney General deems daily fantasy sports illegal sports gambling. Every single casino said, nope, can't do the deal now. Yep. Love you guys, can't do the deal. So we've just acquired Draft Day. We've just put all of our time and energy into building out this new strategy. And then all of a sudden, crickets, because no one could touch it. Needless to say, that was a bad couple months, man. But what we did was we pivoted and looked internationally. Ended up creating a partnership in Australia with a company called CrownBet, which is one of the biggest digital gambling companies, sports gambling companies there. Ended up partnering with them and worked together to launch a company called Draft Stars, which at the time was a very, it became one of the biggest daily fantasy sports sites really in the world. I mean, it didn't have a lot of presence in North America because it was focused on Australian rules football. And it was, it was very big in NBA, but obviously it was an Australian-based company. But they were spending millions and millions and millions of dollars in marketing, and they were starting to grow, which was great. It was good for Draft Day. And then at the same time, I was looking at other kind of demographics, other industries that might be interested in a daily fantasy sports white label, knowing that it was still very gray. This was a very odd time in the realm of daily fantasy sports. And so, started looking at, other industries, other segments. One of them was the adult entertainment industry, because, they're online, male-oriented, male-dominated young people. And most importantly, they take their credit cards out and they're comfortable spending stuff online. And so in my travels, I was able to get introduced to Vivid Entertainment, which at the time was one of the biggest adult entertainment companies out there. And then eventually I was fortunate enough to be introduced to their owner, a guy by the name of Bill Asher. And Bill and I started talking. And, it became very clear that Bill and I shared a very strong perspective on the industry. And two very important things. I mean, the first, that we both believed that sports gambling was an inevitability. We thought that it was a matter of when, not if. And this was, Bill and I really started, talking a lot, call it 2016. The other most important thing that Bill and I agreed on was that the classic daily fantasy sports model, the classic daily fantasy sports product, the classic daily fantasy sports industry was broken. It was very clear to both of us at the time that a vast majority of the money was won by a very small percentage of the people. I mean, I've been a fantasy sports player, mostly season long, my entire life. Love it. I'm addicted to best ball, baseball drafts right now. I'm not one for plugging other sites, but there's a couple sites out there that offer best ball, baseball drafts, and I'm addicted because I love drafts, and they're slow drafts, so it takes place over 4. I love drafts, and it gives me something
too, man.
Anyway.
I love, as much as I work for a DFS company and help over here, season longs. I mean, that was the first thing I fell in love with. Right?
100%.
That's how I got into it.
Super fun. And the problem that I always had with daily fantasy sports is, obviously I've been an operator in the space, so I've been able to see behind the curtain more so than your kind of classic fan. I've known that math algorithms and scripts and professional players and sharks and ex-poker players. I mean, the reality is when Black Friday happened, the poker players went to DFS, right? I mean, that's how they made their money. So I knew that it was nearly impossible for the casual sports fan to win anything in daily fantasy sports. But the casual sports fan, quite frankly, probably didn't know. And a lot of them like the idea of trying to win $1 million. They love their milli makers. So at the end of the day, you have no chance at winning. Literally, unless you're entering hundreds of contests and you have your scripts and you're better off just buying a lottery ticket, quite
Hmm.
frankly, because you don't have to deal with the sweat, and you're not paying $25 for a freaking lottery ticket. So ultimately, Bill and I both shared that perspective that the casual sports fan and the local team fan were left out in the cold unless you really understand. Yes, you could use math algorithms and scripts, but if you're not going to do that, if you were a casual daily fantasy sports player and you weren't aware of every single player on every single team and every single matchup and every single variable and every single weather, potential, every single injury report, you really were putting yourself in an unfavorable position from a chance to win. So Bill and I started talking, and we started thinking, like, how can we create a daily fantasy sports experience that was more casual, that was more akin to the sports fan? I live in Toronto, so how can I, if I know who the Raptors are playing tonight, so I know the Raptors are playing the Knicks, so I know what players, and I'm listening to sports radio in the morning. I'm online looking at the matchup. So I know my Raptors, my favorite players. I know Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet, but, I don't know every single player, but because I'm in tune and getting ready for tonight's game, I know they're playing the Knicks. So I know which players are probably going to play. I know who the stars are. So how can I create an experience to make the casual sports fan who wants to watch their favorite team? How do I make that experience better? And that's when we started looking at UGEA. UGEA is there's a fantasy sports carve out in UGEA, which is the unlawful internet engagement gaming act, whatever
Yeah,
the heck it
yeah.
stands
Hmm.
for. I forget exactly the acronym. But anyway, that's what makes daily fantasy sport legal in a game of skill, which is why we can all operate. As we started looking at that, we started talking, we started trying to figure out other types of game styles that would fit under fit within the carve out, which would allow us to operate for real money. And then we started thinking, okay, like, why can't we create games? And this was after FanDuel and DraftKings had started doing Super Bowl games. So they were doing single event
Hmm.
games. And so we started thinking, well, why can't we do single event games for every single game? And how can we make it so the casual sports fan doesn't have to pick 10 players and deal with salary caps and deal with sharks? And that's what brought us into this kind of prop style of daily fantasy sports. And so Bill and I decided to leave draft day in June of 2017. Started working with Bill July of 2017. Bill is a very successful entrepreneur. He's now one of the biggest commercial real estate developers on the West Coast. He owns tons of bars and restaurants. So he allocated, he committed, numbers of millions of dollars to testing out this new type of product idea. We ended up, fast forward to football season of 2018. We had spent a year testing, developing, figuring things out, playing around with different brand ideas. Came to the Monkey Knife Fight name, the Monkey Knife Fight brand. Of course, we loved it. We wanted it to stand out. You hear Monkey Knife Fight, you're not going to forget it. You see our logo, which is amazing. I believe it's one of the best logos out there. You don't forget it. Bill and I both believe that there's never been a culturally relevant gaming brand out there. You don't see people walking around with DraftKings or FanDuel t-shirts on, or DraftKings or FanDuel hats on. Well, people love our swag, people love our t-shirts, people love our hats, people love our bobbleheads. Like, we believe that there's a massive opportunity in the way our brand is being positioned to really break through and be, like I say, a culturally relevant brand. Anyway, so we ended up launching Monkey Knife Fight in September of 2018, and our plan was just to build awareness. Like, let's get a name out there. We put up some fun billboards in different places and all that kind of stuff. We didn't really think that our product was going to take off until kind of September of 2019. Well, November, December of 2018, we started doing some work with Facebook and the Real Money Gaming team. We started working with some affiliates, including Win Daily. I guess Win Daily was a little bit later, because I don't think you guys had founded by December of 2018. But we, Jason was thinking about things, and so Jason knew about Monkey Knife Fight from a very early point. But we did some affiliate deals with some of the kind of classic DFS affiliates out there that I won't mention because this is a Win Daily podcast. and it just shit just started taking off. Like Bill and I talk about it like drinking from a fire hose. I mean, we were 6 full-time people in December of 2018. Everything just exploded. It was a crazy, crazy, crazy time. We kind of survived through the Super Bowl 2019, and then Bill and I were like, okay, we took a deep breath with everyone on our team. We had to analyze everything. We had to figure out what just happened, how to get better for the following football season. We started hiring people. We needed to build up our team, build up our product. We had the core product, of course, but we didn't, we started developing other sports like WNBA and NASCAR and esports. And then September 2020 for this last football season. And then everything just really exploded, like, holy crap. So, I mean, we've done over $40 million of entry fees now. We have 36 full-time employees. We won this year. We won the FSGA Disruptor of the Year. We won Rookie of the Year. We just got nominated as Fantasy Sports Operator of the Year for the EGR Awards, which is pretty much the biggest kind of online gaming award there is. So, things have been extraordinarily exciting for us at Monkey Knife Fight, where we are the third biggest now. I mean, ultimately we're growing faster than kind of anybody out there. FanDuel and DraftKings are still massive, but they're really fixated and focused on their sports betting product. And to be completely candid, if you're a daily fantasy sports player, if you're a sports fan, if you're a sports fan and you haven't played FanDuel or DraftKings yet, quite frankly, my belief is you're probably not going to.
Exactly.
Because inundated with so much advertising over the past 5-6 years, there's something that's held you back from FanDuel and DraftKings. Quite frankly, Monkey Knife Fight is a completely different experience. Monkey Knife Fight doesn't, it allows you to have fun playing with your favorite teams, playing with your favorite players, and not playing against sharks and pros. If you correctly predict your...
Can you explain exactly, like I've used it, obviously, being over here. I've played with it, especially on the Super Bowl. Explain what it is and how it works. I appreciate this incredible story too, so I apologize for cutting you off. But just explain exactly how it works if you don't mind.
No. So Monkey Knife Fight is, quite frankly, it's extraordinarily easy to play. Our most popular contest is something we call More or Less. And so the way that it works is you come to the site. You could do 2-player More or Less contests, 2 out of 2, all the way up to 8 out of 8 for specific sports and specific events. 2 out of 2 if you correctly predict both of these player props, you're going to win 3 times your buy-in. And the way that it works is we'll use basketball because it's the most recent example. If the Lakers are playing the Raptors, you'd have LeBron James, more or less 28.5 points, and maybe Pascal Siakam, more or less 9.5 rebounds. If you predict both correctly, you're guaranteed to win your money. There's a lot of technology in the background. Basically what we do is we'll take people's picks and we'll match them up against someone who has the exact opposite picks as you. And then effectively the winner of that matchup wins. And then if in the system there isn't someone that has the exact opposite picks that you have, then you're placed in the pool with everybody else that is kind of unmatched to another user. But the reality is, if you correctly pick the props right, you're guaranteed to win your money. So we call it kind of the pick matching engine, but it's complicated on our back end. It's taken us a long time to kind of figure out how to build that out properly. But the reality is we want to give users an experience that's extraordinarily easy to understand and fun to play. And we have like a number of different types of games. We have a contest type called Rapid Fire, where instead of taking LeBron James and Pascal Siakam, you'd have LeBron James versus Pascal Siakam in points. And in that situation, Pascal Siakam would probably be given, 4.5 points. And then you'd have, Rajon Rondo and Fred VanVleet battling for assists. And probably, Rondo would probably, probably in that situation, probably be pretty close. Maybe, Freddie would probably have a plus half an assist. And again, Rapid Fire would go from kind of 2-player matchups up to 6. And then we have we call them stat challenge contests. But as an example, when baseball season comes back, I'll have a contest called Home Run Derby, where in any individual game, you'll pick three players, any three players in an individual game, and then you'll be given options of goals. So like half a home run, 1.5 home runs, 2.5 home runs. So if those three players hits one of those goals, you'll have a specific prize that you can win. So you can select the prize you want to go for. If you want to go for 2.5 home runs amongst three players, more power to you. You know, you can win up to, I believe it's like 5 times your buy-in or something, or maybe 10 times your buy-in actually for that. So you know, we have lots of different contests across all the different sports, and I think we're knock on wood going to be launching MMA in time for the.
I was gonna say, yeah, some stuff's coming up.
Totally, like we haven't launched MMA yet, but we're working on it. Our fingers are crossed. But of course, we've had esports. We've had esports. We built esports last year, League of Legends and Counter-Strike. You know, I'm a big believer in the potential that esports has to offer. You know, the esports DFS is a very new category. There isn't a lot of data yet, but esports gambling is quite big, and quite frankly, you know, ultimately it's a digital audience, and I'm always a big proponent in users who exist in the digital realm being able to transfer it into a gaming experience to enhance, you know, that digital engagement, to make it a little bit more fun. So, you know, we had launched League of Legends and Counter-Strike about a year ago, and quite frankly, with the other sports that were being played, it wasn't a priority for us, to be quite candid. I mean, when you have some of the, some of the other bigger sports playing, you know, that's where you're spending a lot of your marketing dollar. That's where you're spending a lot of your development time and your resources. Well, you know, obviously during this pandemic, it's provided us an opportunity to really focus on esports, and it's really exciting. It's growing faster than I could have imagined. We have more of our classic sports players playing esports than I ever thought. We're talking to a lot of the biggest esports organizations. We just did a deal with, we don't support Fortnite on our platform, but what we've done is we've started building free-to-play games. So as an example, we launched a partnership with a company called Soar Gaming to launch a Fortnite series. It's free to play, free to enter. You go to mkfesports.com, you'll find that free-to-play game for the Cash Cup tournaments, I believe they're called. And you know, so you know, testing a lot of that stuff. We're going to be doing some free-to-play games for the NFL draft. Can't take real money on NFL draft, but we're going to offer a bunch of just fun free-to-play NFL prop draft contests, because we want to engage. We want to keep our fans having a good time. We want to engage our users. And then we're also exploring some other partnerships. We're announcing a major partnership with another massive esports organization next week, to really lean in.
This won't come out for a little while if you want to tell me now, and then I'll
I
release
mean,
it. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I thought I'd shoot from the hip, see what happens.
Yeah. No. I'm not gonna. We have
You're good.
The press release goes out next week.
You're good.
I remember I used to be on TV, so you media people can't get to me.
You're perfect, man. No, and I think, again, you know, thank you for that. I mean, that was all. Usually I ask questions during these, but I don't need to, because you gave me all the information. So I think you're absolutely perfect. No. You told me you're going to do this, and I'm totally okay with it, because you got to. Right, cool. No one's here to listen to me, man. That's not the whole point of an interview. They're here to listen to you. So you did the perfect job. And I think first I do want to say, I think it is I think it's quite ironic, but it's awesome how everything has come full circle where you're doing free-to-play games again. Do you see that? Funny. Like a little laughter in that. But I understand why you do it. And I guess, like, with gambling, with prop plays, with all these things, obviously prop plays come from, at least where everybody started doing them, was the Super Bowl, right? Everything with prop plays comes from, you know, touchdowns for Tom Brady, you know, Patrick Mahomes and Jimmy Garoppolo. Do they go over or under 550 yards? Like, totally. Like, everything comes from there. Why do you think it took so long for prop plays to leave the Super Bowl and start coming into just everyday games? Because they're still fun. It's still enjoyable. People still love to do them. But for some reason, as culturally awesome as they are, we only do it one time a year. I think it's great that now we have more opportunities to do them outside of the Super Bowl.
I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, I think one, the technology. I mean, in order to be able to run a daily fantasy sports contest, you need to have really great real-time data, period, right? So obviously that's taken time to evolve. But when it comes to props and why it took a long time for a daily fantasy, and we're not the only one. There's a couple other
Mm-hmm.
daily fantasy sports companies that offer prop contests. I think that one of the reasons why it took time is, I can't think of the right analogy, but you know, daily fantasy sports is the classic conventional form of daily fantasy sports as we know it was conceived after the UGA carve out was written.
Okay.
So the carve out was really based on season long fantasy sports. So FanDuel, DraftKings, and the other DFS, conventional DFS companies, I use conventional salary cap, same thing,
Mm-hmm.
conventional DFS companies, they then looked at UGA and created DFS, conventional daily fantasy sports. So they interpreted UGA and they figured out the way to make it legal, most likely, to be completely candid, to make it comfortable for payment processors and for other brands to work with us. If you can't get money into the system, there is no system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think for a lot of people, they just assumed that there's season long and there's daily, and that was it. I think it took a long time for people to step back and say, wait a second. If FanDuel and DraftKings and the other daily fantasy sports companies can interpret UGA this way, could there be other interpretations that open up the door to other product innovation? Innovation is hard, right? So I think it takes some forward thinking in sitting back and saying, what about this? And so, I think I think it just took time for props and the idea that daily fantasy prop style contests would fit under UGA, and that I think it just took time. And we did a game of skill analysis to prove that our style of daily fantasy sports is in fact a game of skill.
Mm-hmm.
We work with some of the best lawyers, some of the best people in the industry, just to make sure that what we were doing was completely legal. We work with the best payment processors, the best banks in the space. It takes a lot of time, and quite frankly, it takes a lot of money. There are a number of other, prop style daily fantasy sports companies out there, but, a lot of people have asked me, like, why has Monkey Knife Fight exploded while some of these others haven't quite gotten over that hump? One of the reasons is we're funded. We're funded by a risk-taking entrepreneur. So, we as a team are able to go out there and do things that some of these other companies aren't able to do. We're able to excite partners in ways that, straight up, some of these other companies might not be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
We can buy advertising on Facebook that, quite frankly, some of these companies aren't able to do. So, it's not necessarily who's first. Google didn't invent search. You've heard this a billion times before, right? So we weren't the first prop fantasy company out there, but I think we were the first prop fantasy company that had our suite of games. Mm-hmm. We were the first daily fantasy company that had a brand quite as exciting as Monkey Knife Fight is. So I think we just kind of hit the perfect storm while we had a very successful, an extraordinarily successful serial media entrepreneur who was excited about building something. And, I was lucky enough to be able to find incredible people to add to our team. We also, Monkey Knife Fight, we work, I think, unlike a lot of other companies work, we are 100% remote, which ironically has kind of helped us also within this pandemic. We're 37 full-time people now. I haven't met face-to-face and a vast majority of the people on our team. We talk like this, we meet all the, but so we're very used to this, but, we also run our organization. I use this analogy a lot, especially with my team, is I don't know if you're familiar with the sport rugby. I'm an ex-rugby player. I believe in the philosophy of a rugby union team. Rugby for a lot of the listeners who probably don't know, there aren't a lot of whistles. There aren't plays. There are plays, sorry, but it's not like football where you have 30 seconds, you have your one job, and that's what you do. In rugby, in order for a team to successfully score a try, which is a touchdown, your entire team needs to work as one. You need to be you need to understand what your responsibility is, but what the responsibility of every other team member on your team is, because it's a running clock. So if somebody on your team falls down, if somebody on your team gets tackled and can't get up fast enough, you need to be able to work collectively to, you need to be able to compensate for that. You need to work as one. You need to communicate extraordinarily efficiently. You need to be comfortable with potentially doing jobs that may not be in your skill set necessarily. You need to be able to be comfortable to morph your kind of daily routine to be able to help the company move forward. And I think we've hired some incredible people. We have an amazing team. And quite frankly, hey, if there are any people, any developers out there who, any good backer or full stack developers out there who are looking at an exciting career in daily fantasy sports, honestly, careers at monkeyknifefight.com. Do not be shy. See, Michael, my other philosophy of life is if you don't ask, you don't get. The reality
Couldn't
is,
agree more.
it's similar to something that Wayne Gretzky said. I think it was Wayne Gretzky. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So, if you don't ask, you don't get. What's the worst thing that's going to happen, right? Someone's going to say no. Oh, damn.
Right back where you started.
Yeah, that's right. If you can't take no for an answer, like, just stop. Like, just you're not going to be an entrepreneur, right?
Couldn't agree.
You're not going to be in an entrepreneurial setting. So, I'm a big believer. Don't ask, you don't get. So, hey, any great developers out there? Hey, we're always looking for great people.
I love it, man. Hey, you got to plug it. Why not, right? As you said, what's the worst thing that can happen? You get to have a nice conversation with me, I guess. That's the worst part of your day so far. So I
There
think.
you go. And speaking about plugging, oh my God, I've gone almost over a half an hour without actually. Go to monkeyknifefight.com, and it's a free $5 game when you sign up. And you can play Counter-Strike right now. You can play League of Legends right now. And of course, I believe Win Daily is one of our great affiliates. So I will not step on your promo code, Michael. What is the Win Daily promo code? Win Daily, I would imagine.
Pretty positive it's Win Daily, yes.
Yeah. So if you can sign up for free, you get a free $5 game, and if you use the promo code Win Daily, we're gonna match your first deposit 100% up to $50. So
look at that.
Do it, man.
Not too bad. Free money to make more money.
Free money to make more money, man.
Who doesn't love free money? And I do want to get to the partnership a little bit. So as you've said, you've partnered with many different affiliates, such as Win Daily, and you're on these shows and you're doing a lot of different things. How did you and Jason come in contact, and how did you guys develop this relationship to make sure that it is a partnership? Both of us are growing together.
I met Jason online. Jason is also a believer in you don't ask, you don't get. If funny enough, if you look at his amazing book, I'm quoted. I actually have a quote on the back cover of that book.
No way. I've read it. I guess I didn't read it that hard.
Well, you didn't read the back of the book. Right?
Maybe that's what it was.
Read the book.
It is Kindle. I do have it on a Kindle, so I really don't think I'm reading the back of the book of a Kindle. But anyway.
No, so I met Jason years ago, just online, just LinkedIn or something, Twitter. I don't even know. I'm not a massive Twitter guy. I like it, but I'm kind of busy and I'm old. Like, I'm 45, so I think I'm a little bit older. I think anyway, and I'm not a sports content creator. Anyway, so I met Jason. Jason is a phenomenal guy. I really liked his approach, his philosophy on life, and quite frankly, we're sports guys and we like daily. So he was kind enough to let me read some of his book, and I thought it was amazing. And as he was explaining what he was planning on doing with Win Daily and the site, obviously I loved it. I thought it was I think it's a great concept, great content. He's assembling a great team, and I had no doubt that Jason, being the person that he is, would be able to assemble really awesome content creators and really build a spectacular site. So, as Monkey Knife Fight was starting to expand with a number of affiliates, it was a no-brainer to start working with Jason. And the way we work with affiliates, ultimately, yeah, we want new users. We want them to try and promote new users. And, with affiliates, of course, there's what's in it for them. They get a piece of, they get rewarded based on users that sign up. But, with Monkey Knife Fight, the priority for us is also keeping users engaged. So, whenever we work with new affiliates, we really like to help them. We want them to feel like their content can be used to drive more activity on our site. And because our games are very different from the classic FanDuels and DraftKings of the world, because our games are more casual and more single game focused, it opens up a whole nother area of kind of differentiated content for them to kind of break through. Because as you and I both know, there are hundreds of content sites out there, hundreds of daily fantasy sports and fantasy sports sites out there, and there's only so many times you can read the same matchup article for the upcoming Millie Maker, right? So what Monkey Knife Fight, what MKF does is it gives content partners, kind of an anchor point to start crafting new, unique content that, quite frankly, can appeal to that sports fan that might only really care about their favorite team and their favorite players. So, hey, if I'm I'll say it again, if I'm a Toronto Raptors fan and I'm a big NBA guy and I'm big in every sport, but, if I'm a big Raptors fan, I'm more likely to read an article that I see online that's focused on, Fred VanVleet and Norman Powell than I will be on, an article that's talking about the second star on the Denver Nuggets, even though he is a Canadian, Jamal Murray.
I was going to say, yeah, right.
You see how everything to me comes back to Canadian and Passover. Happy Passover to all my fellow tribe who are listening to this amazing podcast.
Thank you for that. One time I have a friend who is the chef, and he made me some potato latkes, and they were delicious. And that was my Passover story. It also helps that, again, he's like a pretty great chef. Not as good of a friend, better chef. But yeah, man, I mean, this has been absolutely fantastic. I really appreciate you hanging out. And I said it was going to be 20 minutes. Here we are 50 minutes later, and I loved every second of it.
Sorry about that.
No. Again, I'll let these go as long as possible. As you're having fun and we're promoting both of our businesses, and we can really get that out there. I think what you guys do is really, really interesting. And I wanted to hear the story behind it. The last question I have for you is the name, the brand. I mean, what were you guys doing that night when you came up with this stuff? Because I wish I was there, fly on the wall kind of thing. That must have been incredible.
Bill, the owner, and I were drinking. But he owns
to get to Monkey Knife Fight. Like I am so curious what some of the names were on the way and some of the names that came after it. Where you guys like, maybe we should scale that back. Monkey Knife Fight works.
Yeah, there were a bunch of names. I mean, the way that Bill lives in California, I live in Toronto. So we weren't together when we were doing this. He told me the story that how he names a lot of his bars and restaurants is he sits there with his bar manager or whatever, and they drink and they just throw out names. So we did that one night, and there were a bunch of names that we had thrown around, and some of them good, some of them bad. Monkey Knife Fight is a Simpsons reference, if you didn't know. Oh yeah, Mr. Burns has a yacht that sails in international waters, and when he's on that boat in international waters, he has monkey knife fights. As Homer Simpson once said, there are no simple joys quite like monkey knife fight, right? So you can YouTube or Google that. And so it was one of those names where it was like, monkey knife fight, that's kind of fun. And quite frankly, we had gone through a bunch of different names, and I remember waking up the next morning and looking at my phone because we were doing this over Skype, and there was like a text message and it said Monkey Knife Fight, and I was like, what the heck is that? Like I didn't, Bill and I were like, oh well, it happened. So we gave a list of names to our designer, and he came back with the logo, and we were just like, oh well, I guess our name is Monkey Knife Fight. Like we just fell in love with it. So some tequila over Skype over one night. And obviously coming from two Simpsons fans, the Monkey Knife Fight reference somehow got bantered about.
I love it. And I do love the logo. You're not lying. That logo is absolutely fantastic.
It's a sick logo, man.
Absolutely fantastic. So I guess with that, though, how do you make sure people understand what your company is? Like sometimes when like the name is so far away from what you do, there's a huge learning process and everything involved. What do you guys do to make sure that, do you just draw them in with the logo and then explain what you do? Because if someone just said Monkey Knife Fight, I don't know what I would assume, honestly.
Yeah, but if you go to the website, we try and make it extraordinarily easy. Like we just want people going to the website because if you're a sports monkeyknifefight.com, you're like, oh, I get it, right? So that's why we did it. Like the fact of the matter is, draft. Not to say like DraftKings. You can go like draft ball. Draft what? Like who the hell cares?
The thing about DraftKings too is like, especially with now them pivoting to barely even, I don't even see them do any advertising, especially I'm here in New Jersey where everything's legal. I don't see them do any advertising for the actual drafting of players anymore. Now everything's just for the sportsbook. So
Yes.
it's kind of ironic that like they don't even, their name barely even references what they do anymore because they do the
No,
sportsbook so
because
much more.
well, and they've spent 10
Yeah.
years and millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars marketing. Like they know they're not getting any new fantasy
Mhm.
players, so let's go for sports betting. Like
Yeah.
that's cool, I get it, which is fine. That's exactly where we come in, right?
Excuse me. I just think it's funny that you don't draft anymore at DraftKings. You pick
It's true.
games as
Yeah.
like sports betting. So I don't know.
Well,
I just think it's kind of funny.
if you're living in New Jersey or one of
Yes.
the other
Yeah.
50 states
Exactly.
they're live in, right?
Yeah.
And that's the other misnomer. A lot of North Americans, quite frankly, think that sports gambling is legal now. Well, it's not. Like
21 states, I think.
but mobile sports gambling is only, I
Yeah.
believe, in
Even
9,
less.
right?
Hmm.
So, I mean, this is the whole point. Like, Monkey Knife Fight's available in 30 states, and we're working on getting our DFS licenses and some of the others because it's just everything happened so quickly. We just didn't, there's certain states have certain regulations, and you need certain,
Hmm.
certain code and certain kind of back end administrative kind of brick and mortar things to get access into certain states. So it's just that stuff all just has taken so much time that unfortunately we're not in New Jersey yet. We're not in Tennessee yet, but we're applying. So we will get there very soon. And quite frankly, we've built this business without even having an app yet. We're still finishing up polishing our app to get it into the app store. So we have like, we're close to 100,000 users and we've done over $40 million in entries on our mobile site and our desktop. So we have a really nice mobile website, but we haven't even launched our app yet. So obviously, yes, we're very excited about that. So yeah, I mean, I think that, we just want people going to our site because we want people curious. What is Monkey Knife Fight? Like we'll give
Hmm.
out t-shirts and hats. We want people to say, what the heck is Monkey Knife Fight? Because when you hear the name, eventually you're like, oh, I'm going to go check it out. And we think that if you're a sports fan and you see Monkey Knife Fight, you're like, oh, that looks fun. That looks easier than picking 10 players and dealing with math salary caps and competing again. I'm just going to now pick 3 players, do some props. I like it.
Easy enough, man. And if anybody out there listening, we have to assume that you've done some sort of prop plays, some sort of sports gambling, some sort of DFS. You have a couple bucks on the line. It makes everything so much more enjoyable. No
Everybody
question
likes
about it.
everybody likes a little bit of a sweat. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Just a little bit. Not too I personally don't like too much, but just a little bit definitely keeps me watching those 35-point blowouts a little bit. So I always do
Well, and
enjoy
that's
that.
why I like the free game on sign up. Man, you sign up a Monkey Knife Fight for free today. Go play a Counter-Strike game. It's free. Why not? And the cool thing about Counter-Strike and League of Legends is on the Monkey Knife Fight site, after you enter a contest, you can actually stream the Counter-Strike match on our site. So
That's awesome.
no, it's awesome. And I wasn't a massive esports guy, but man, Counter-Strike and League of Legends, I mean, League of Legends is a little bit more complicated. There is an amazing League of Legends documentary on Netflix to learn a little bit more. But on Counter-Strike, it's a much easier game to kind of understand from a sports gaming perspective.
And with that, I apologize. I was going to let you go, but that's really interesting. Are you guys going to be able to do that with any of the traditional sports as well moving forward? The streaming within the app or within the site?
No, probably not.
No, okay. Because I think FanDuel started doing that with hockey right before it got shut down. Like if you bet on a game or if you started to pick some players, you could then watch within the app, which is kind of cool. So that's just out of curiosity. But Nick, this has been absolutely fantastic. I don't need to keep you any longer. I love what you guys are doing. We obviously love over here what you're doing at Win Daily, what you guys are doing with Monkey Knife Fight. I think we're gonna do this thing together. Let's keep growing. And as he said, promo code Win Daily, give free $50. What's wrong with that? Who's gonna be angry?
No one. No one will be
Nobody.
angry at all.
Love it,
Michael,
man.
thanks, man. It was a true pleasure. I really enjoyed this. Sorry, I talked too much.
Hey, man, you're perfect. Thanks so much. Nick Sulsky, Monkey Knife Fight president. Have a wonderful day, everybody.